The topic I'm going to talk about tonight, I had thought it was announced. If not, it'll come as a surprise to you, but I hope not as an unpleasant surprise, is the topic of money and inflation. It's not a topic I think there's anybody in this room who is uninterested in, at least the inflation half of it. Most of you are also very interested in the money half, but from a different point of view. Whenever I talk about inflation, I am reminded of a wonderful story about the man who decided to take advantage of the growing science of cryogenics. That's the science of freezing people up so that they can be in deep freeze for a time and then restored to life. And he got himself put into the deep freeze for a 20-year period. And of course, before he went into the deep freeze, he left all his securities and his worldly belongings at his brokers with instructions to do the best he could for him. And 20 years later, after the deep freeze had worked, he was unthawed and came out of the deep freeze. And of course, the first thing he did was to run to the telephone to call his broker. And his broker said to him, "Well, you know, you're a millionaire many times over." "Oh, really?" said the man. "What happened to this stock?" And the broker said it went from here to here, multiplied 10 times, 20 times. "What happened to this stock?" He kept on going. But suddenly the telephone operator interrupted. The man was just ecstatic. Telephone operator interrupted and said, "Sorry, your 3 minutes are up. That'll be $250,000 for the next 3 minutes, please." That's real inflation. That's at the moment a story, but it's not a story which does not have some examples in history. Inflation is a disease. It's a dangerous disease for a society. It is sometimes a fatal disease for a society. It's a disease that, if allowed to rage unchecked, can destroy a society. And we have many such examples. The classic examples, of course, are the extreme examples of Germany, of Austria, of Russia after the First World War, when inflation really did reach levels at which the kind of apocryphal story I told you was a literal description of the reality. When inflation reached levels at which employers would pay their workers 3 times a day after breakfast, lunch, and dinner so they could go out and spend the money before it lost all its value. That's the real extreme cases. But you don't have to go to such extreme cases to see the enormous harm which inflation left unchecked can do. You have many examples in South America. Brazil, before 1964, was brought down by an inflation that led to a revolution that toppled the existing government in order to stem the inflation. In the famous case of Chile, with Mr. Allende in power, he produced an inflation, which was one of the major factors that caused the economic catastrophe that led to the replacement of his government by a military dictatorship.